Hello. If you are watching this, that's probably because I'm at jury duty right now. Trust me, I would rather be here with you. But we're going to go ahead and go through the notes. So before we do that, we're going to take a look at a few inequalities just on a number line to get us thinking about inequalities and domain. So let's take a look at our first graph. We are comparing to 2. So we want x's that are compared to 2. So what inequality would you put in between your x and your 2? You have an open circle, your arrow is going to the right, so hopefully you are thinking x is greater than 2. Now for our second graph, we again are comparing to 2. We have a closed circle this time, and our arrow is going to the left, so less than or equal to. Go ahead and take a look at a few more. These are not in your notes, so we're just looking up here. So take a look at number 1. What are you comparing to? We're comparing to 4. So we have x somehow compared to 4. Closed circle, arrow going to the right. So we should be thinking x is greater than or equal to 4. For number 2, we're looking at -3. Open circle, arrow going to the left, so we should be thinking strictly less than. Number 3 is a little bit different. This is our compound inequality. So the easiest way to do this is to write your lowest number first, leave a space, put your x in the middle, and then write your highest number. If we do it that way, our inequalities will all open the same way, towards the bigger number. Then we just have to go back and see if we need to underline any of them because of closed circle. And we do, with the -3. So we're going to go back and put a line underneath. So this is saying that x is greater than or equal to -3. At the same time, it is strictly less than 4. We'll practice a few more of these as we go through our notes. Again, just look up here. These are not in your notes, so we're just going to take a look and see if we can figure out the domains of each piece. Now, if you remember from last class, domain is your x value. So let's take a look at our first piece to the left, and then we'll look at our second piece. The first piece, what x value is it relating to? So you've got your open circle, and that's on -3. So these are our x's that are compared to -3. And how are they compared to -3? They are strictly less than -3 because of the open circle. Now for your second piece, the one off to the right, again, it is also compared to -3. So we're going to have x compared to -3. We have a closed circle. So these are x's that are greater than or equal to -3. Now we're going to take a look at it where we don't have horizontal lines, where our lines are in different directions. But the idea for domains is the exact same. So we've got 2 pieces. Let's start with the left piece first. So if we take a look, we are comparing to 3. 1, 2, 3. So these are x's that are compared to 3. We have a closed circle for this line. So all of these x's are less than or equal to 3. Now for the second piece, yes, we have a negative slope here. We're not going to worry about that. We are just taking a look at what x value. So if I were to put a dotted line in here, that would again be at 3. So all of these x's are compared to 3. Since we have an open circle, these are strictly greater than 3. Hopefully this has helped. We're just looking at x values. Now go ahead and go to your notes. You should be on page 9. And we're going to put everything together. So let's take a look at number 1. If we were to put our dotted line, our boundary, like we were working last class, where would we have put that dotted line? What x value? It's the first thing you have to ask yourself. Hopefully you're looking for our opened and closed circles, and our dotted line would go right here at 1. And if you notice, we have 1, 2, 3 different pieces, and that's why we have 3 different lines, different sections off to the side. Let's start with our first piece. Let's first start with our domain. These are x's that are compared to 1. So how are they compared to 1? These are x's that are strictly less than 1. Because you have an open circle going to the left. So on our first line over here, these are our domains. We're going to have x is less than 1. Now if you remember from graphing last time, we thought of the f of x or g of x as a y. And then what went over here was our mx plus b. So it's exactly what we have to figure out from this given line, is find our slope and find our y-intercept. So from this line, we have to figure out our slope and our y-intercept. Now our slope, remember, we always read a graph from left to right. So let's go ahead and figure out our slope. Hopefully you're looking at this and you're thinking up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So if it is 2 over 1, that is the same thing as 2. Now let's see what our y-intercept would be. Where do we cross the y-axis? We cross right here, and that is a -3. So 0, -3. So our b is -3. So we're going back to what we did last unit, and we're going to plug it into y equals mx plus b. Our y is already here, so we're just going to go ahead and write 2x minus 3. Let's go ahead and look at our second piece. Now that's a dot. That's our point. It's it. Just that point. So what is our x value? And if we're not sure, write the ordered pair. That is 1, 2. So our x value is 1. And if you remember from last class, whenever we just had a point, that was when x just equaled a number. And in this case, our x value is 1. What's our y value? Because that's what goes here. Our y value is 2, so we're going to go ahead and just put a 2. Now for our third piece, this is a horizontal line. As soon as we think horizontal, we should be thinking hoi. Horizontal line, 0 slope, y equals a number. So let's first look at our domain. These are x's that, how do they compare to that 1? Open circle, so these are your x's that are strictly greater than 1. So that goes in your domain column. X is greater than 1. Now we have to write that equation. So if we were to have that whole line be shown, what would the equation of that whole line be? So count. What would your y be? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it would be y equals 4. We already have our y equals, so on our line right here, we just put a 4. So pause after this if you need to talk about it or ask any questions. If not, we're going to go ahead and continue to number 2. So for number 2, this one, we have 3 different pieces. So let's go ahead and put in our dotted lines. Where would those dotted lines go? I'm looking for my closed and open circles, and I'm going to put my dotted line right there. So this one is at a -1, and the second one is at 2. Those numbers come in, they're important because that's what we need to write our domains. So again, we're going to start left and then work our way right. You don't always have to, but let's go ahead and make sure that we're on the same page and going left to right. So our first piece, what is our domain? we're compared to -1. So all of these are x's that are what compared to -1? Hopefully we're thinking they're going to the left, so these are x's that are less than -1 because we have an open circle. Remember, our g of x is just like y, so now we've got to figure out our mx plus b. So what is our slope and what is our y-intercept? Our slope, if we pick these 2 points, it appears that we can go down 2 over 1, 2, 3. Double check my math there. So down 2 over 3. Now if I were to continue that line, would it cross the y-intercept? If I were to go down 2 over 1, 2, 3, I'm not going to cross my y-intercept nicely. So if we don't have a nice y-intercept, we have to go back to what we learned last unit and use our point slope formula, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. I know this is a little bit extra work. Don't worry, there's only 2 of these on here that we have to use our point slope formula. So hopefully you have your calculator, and we're going to pick a point. You have 2 options. We can pick this one over here or the open circle. The one right here, that is -4, 0. That might be easier to use because of the 0. So that's the one I'm going to pick to use. You don't have to. You could pick -1, -2. We're going to go ahead and we're going to plug it in. So y minus 0 equals -2/3 times x minus a -4. So if we remember, minus a negative becomes a plus 4. From there, we're going to go ahead and distribute. Well, y minus 0 just becomes y, so that's helpful. So we're going to have -2 over 3x, and then -2 over 3 times a 4. So I'm going to grab the calculator. -2 divided by 3 times 4. And that gives me -2.6 repeating. And we could always go math, enter, enter, and turn it into a fraction. I do not care which way you represent it, either way. So let's go ahead and use -2.6 repeating, or -2.7. So this piece right here, we're going to go ahead and write up on our line. -2/3 x minus 2.7, or you could have written it as -8 over 3. If you have questions, why don't you pause right now and hopefully someone in the classroom could answer. If not, we will continue by looking at our second piece. So our second piece, again, let's figure out our domain between what 2 x values. We're going between -1 and 2. So this one's the little tricky one. Let's put our -1 first, leave a space, x, leave a space, and then your 2. If we do it this way, our inequality will always open up to the right towards the bigger number. Now we just have to figure out if we need any lines underneath. So where do we have closed circles? If you look at our graph, we have a closed circle on the -1. So I'm going to go back to my domain and put a line underneath that inequality comparing to -1. From there, we want to look at our line and say, okay, what is our slope and what is our y-intercept? So go ahead and figure out your slope and your b for your y-intercept. So our slope, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. So 1 over 1, which is the same thing as 1. Our y-intercept, where does it cross the y-axis? Hopefully you're thinking 2, or 0, 2. So our m is 1, so we can have a 1x plus 2. Do you need to write that 1? Hopefully you said no, you don't have to, but you can. So you can have 1x plus 2, or you can just leave that as x plus 2. Okay, let's take a look at our last piece. What is our domain? So for our last piece, piece number 3, we are compared to 2. So take a look. We are x's that are what compared to 2? We are going to the right, and we have a closed circle on that dotted line. So all of these are x's that are greater than or equal to 2. Now we have to figure out our slope and our y-intercept. Now for our slope, just looking at this, do we have a positive slope or a negative slope? If you're reading your graph from left to right, is your graph going up or down? Hopefully you're thinking down. We have a negative slope. So I'm going down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. So our slope down 2 over 1 is the same thing as negative 2. So we know it's going to be negative 2x. Now our y-intercept. Let's work backwards and see if it will cross the y-axis. Because if it does, then we can grab that point. If not, we'll have to use our point slope formula. So let's work backwards. So I'm going to go left 1 up 2, left 1 up 2, left 1 up 2. And it does. It falls nicely. Now we've got to figure out what that point is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that'll be a plus 6. And we are done. If you have any questions, please pause and ask. If not, I'm going to continue to 3, 4, 5, and 6. So for 3, 4, 5, and 6, I have just copied the graphs from numbers 1 and 2. So f of x, this is graph number 1, and this g of x is graph number 2. So take a minute and make sure you can identify the two different graphs, because we're going to go ahead and evaluate these just based on the graph. So for number 3, it says f of 0. Last class we did it algebraically. Today you're going to take a look and do it graphically. We remember that that 0 is meaning x equals 0. So essentially, I want to know the ordered pair 0, comma what? What's that y value? So let's look at your f graph. F of x is your first graph. So go to the top of your note page and go to when x is 0. What is the point? So if I'm looking, I know x is 0 right here. I need to go down. I need to find the graph. If I go up, I'm not going to hit a graph at all. So I'm going to go down, and here's my point. What point is that? 0, comma, negative 3. So my y value, my output, is negative 3. So you're kind of just filling in the y for whatever x is given to you. Let's take a look at number 4, g. So we've got to figure out g. Now g is your question number 2. So take a look at your graph number 2. That's your g. And we want to know when x equals 2. So you're looking for the point 2, comma what? So 1, 2. This one's a little tricky because you've got an open circle and a closed circle. So what do you think you want to go to? The open circle or the closed circle? Remember, your open circle is not included. Your closed circle is included. So hopefully you guys are saying closed circle. So you want to go to your closed circle. So what point is that? It is 2, comma 2. So 2 for our y is our answer. Number 5, g of 3. So again, x equals 3. We're looking for the point 3, comma what on our g function. So again, that is graph number 2. So find when x is 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it happens to be right here. So that is 3, 0, so our output is 0. So for number 6, we've got f of 1, that's saying x equals 1. So we've got 1, what? What is our output? So if we go to our graph, that's question number 1, so go up to your top graph, go to when x is 1, and you're looking up and down. Now you've got 2 open circles and a closed. Which one do you want to go to? Hopefully you're thinking closed. So it's 1, 2, so we want the y value, which is a 2. If you have questions on that, please pause and ask. If not, we're going to go ahead and continue to the next page and do 7, 8, and 9. Alright, question 7. I did not fill in as much as I did for the previous 2, so we're going to have to fill in a little bit of information here. Do our lines. How many pieces do we have? That's our first thing we have to look for. How many pieces do we have? We have 2 pieces. So here's our y equals mx plus b if, and then we have our domain. Our second piece, that's our mx plus b if, and then our domain. Where would you put your dotted line? Where would you put your dotted line? So look for your opened and closed circle, and let's go ahead and put a dotted line. What x value is that? That is negative 2. So again, let's start with our left piece. So those are x's that are what compared to negative 2? Those are x's that are what compared to negative 2? You have an open circle going to the left, so hopefully you are thinking x's that are strictly less than negative 2. Now for our second piece off to the right, we can go ahead and do our domain. Those are x's that are also compared to negative 2, but in this case you have a closed circle and they're going to the right, so those are x's that are greater than or equal to negative 2. Once you have your domains, we can go ahead and look for our mx plus b, so our slope and our y-intercept for both. Let's take a look at the graph on the left, so the one I have labeled number 1. Let's find our slope and let's find our y-intercept. So it appears our slope, you can go down 1 over 1. So that's the same thing as negative 1. Now what's shown to us, it doesn't cross the y-intercept, but let's have our line keep going. So if we were to extend that line, where would it cross? So down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. It would cross right here. So what y value is that? Negative 5. So we've got our m, we've got our b, let's fill it in. Now just make sure that if you did your domains first, that we line it up with the correct. So I've done my left piece first, that's my x is strictly less than negative 2, so I'm going to put it in this first line. So negative 1x or negative x minus 5. Now let's go ahead and find our slope and our y-intercept for our second piece. Our slope appears to be 1 over 1, which is the same thing as 1. And this one's nice because it crosses our y-axis nicely at 0, 4. So our b is our 4. Now we're just going to write it in slope-intercept form. Remember, our y equals is already taken care of. That's our h of x. So we're just filling in our mx plus b. So we can write 1x or just x plus 4. So it's really nice when we don't have to do our point slope formula, when it can cross the y-intercept nicely. If you have questions, please pause. If not, we're going to continue to question 8. All right, for question 8, I didn't give you anything, just a graph. So we have to figure out our piecewise function. We have to write our equations. We also have to write that fun, funky bracket. So let's go ahead and have this be, I don't know, f of x, why not, equals, we're going to do a big squiggle bracket, because if you look, we have 1, 2, 3 pieces. So start up, we're going to do forward S, and then a backwards S. And I'm going to go ahead and set up my space first. So I've got a line, if, and then another line. I'm going to do 3 of these. Alright, let's start with our first piece. What is our domain? It does help to figure out our domains if we put in our dotted lines. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So it appears I have a dotted line at -3, and I also a dotted line at 4. So my domain for my far left piece, these are x's that are less than -3, because I have an open circle. Why don't we go ahead and do our domains for each piece? Our middle one, we've got our -3, we've got our 4. So -3, leave a space, x, leave a space, 4. Keep our inequalities opening towards the bigger number. And then we've got to go back. Which one do we need to put a line under? Which one is closed? The one on the -3 is closed. Let's put a line underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer this to my line over here. I have to squeeze it in. So -3 is less than or equal to x, which is less than 4. And then for our last piece, we are compared to 4. So these are x's that are compared to 4. We have a closed circle, and we're going to the right. So greater than or equal to 4. I'm going to transfer that over. Pause and go back and look and ask questions if you are confused. If not, I'm going to go ahead and continue to figure out the equation of each piece. So let's go ahead and start with our first one, the one farthest to the left. Remember, f of x is the same thing as our y, so we just have to figure out mx plus b for each of these. So for our first one over here to the left, let's figure out our slope. It appears to be -3 over 4. So -3 over 4, now we've got to see if it crosses nicely. So let's continue that pattern again. So let's go down 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4. It does not land on our y-axis. So what does that mean? Well, that means we have to use our point slope formula. It's the last time we have to use it today. It takes a little bit more work, but we can do it. So what point do we want to use? We can either use our open circle or we can use our point over here. It doesn't matter. And I'm probably going to pick the one that you don't want to do, but that's okay. I'm going to use the open circle. I'm going to use the -3, -6. So -3 is max 1, -6 is my y1, and I have my slope. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. So I've got y minus a -6, so that'll become a +6, equals -3 over 4 x, don't forget that parenthesis, minus a negative 3, so subtracting a negative 3 becomes a plus 3. Alright, this one we need a little bit more work, so we're going to go ahead and distribute. So I've got y plus 6 equals negative 3 over 4x, negative 3 over 4 times 3. So negative 3 over 4 times 3, negative 2.25. Let's go ahead and use that decimal. So negative 2.25. Have to get rid of that positive 6, so let's go ahead and subtract 6. So we get y equals negative 3 over 4x minus 8.25. So that's right here is what I'm writing on that first line. So negative 3 over 4x minus 8.25. If you wanted it as a fraction, you got negative 33 over 4. Either way, doesn't matter. Alright, that was the bulk of our work. Now the other two should be a little bit easier. So let's take a look at our middle piece. Horizontal line, we like these. This is a hoy. So it's just a number. So what is our y value? Where do we cross? What's our y value? Hopefully you are saying negative 2. So that's it, negative 2. That's an easy one. We like those. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our last piece. Let's find our slope. I think this is the point right here. So I'm looking at that far right piece. Remember, slope, always go left to right. So I'm going up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So my slope should be 1 over 4. Fingers crossed, if we go backwards, hopefully we will land on our y-axis. So let's go backwards. Down 1 over 4. Down 1 over 1, 2, 3. Oh, good, we do. So I extend that. It would cross at 0. So my y-intercept is 0. So I've got 1/4 x plus 0. Do I need to write the 0? Hopefully you're saying no. So I can go back and erase that and just leave it as 1/4 x. But if you wanted to leave the 0, you could. Alright, if you have questions, again, please pause and ask someone or go back and rewind and take a look at this again. I will also be posting this on our Google Classroom. We're going to go ahead and we're going to finish up with number 9. Okay. We got to come up. What do we want to name this? Of course, you're saying something different. I'm going to use g of x. And how many pieces do we have? 2. We have 2 pieces. So we're going to draw that funky bracket. We're going to set it up. Alright, my first step, draw in my dotted line. Where are those circles? What x value is that? Should be at 2. So let's go ahead and figure out our domains for each. Again, let's go left piece first. So these are x's that are compared to 2. How are they compared to 2? We have a closed circle, so these are x's that are less than or equal to 2. I'm going to write it on the first line. So if my first piece is all my x's that are less than or equal to 2, what's the domain for my second piece? Hopefully you're thinking x's that are strictly greater than 2. Open circle, just greater than. Okay, now we've got to figure out our slope. and our y-intercept for each piece. So let's go left one first. What is our slope? So go ahead and figure out your slope. If I'm looking at this, here's a point. Down 1, 2, 3 over 1, 1, 2, 3 over 1. So for that first piece, it's looking like my slope is down 3 over 1, which is the same thing as negative 3. And then our B, where does it cross? If I'm looking for my y-intercept, 1, 2, right here at 3. So I've got my M, I've got my B for my y-intercept, and we're going to go ahead and write it. Remember, our g of x is like our y. So y equals negative 3x plus 3. Do the same thing for our second one. So let's find our slope and our y-intercept. Our slope, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. So 1 over 1, which is the same thing as 1. Now, fingers crossed, if we go backwards, let's hope it crosses the y-axis. So down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. It does. So where does it cross the y-axis? Hopefully you're saying 2. So we've got our m is 1, our b is 2. So we've got 1x plus 2. And make sure you're lining it up correctly with where you wrote your domains. So that's why I always try to tend to work left to right. Now, do you have to leave the 1 for the 1x? You don't, so we can erase it. You can leave it if you want. Okay, that is it. You guys do have a quiz next class. We will review beforehand. If you have any questions at all, please ask. If you want to come in den time tomorrow, please let someone know so they can write you a den time pass or leave your name so I can get a den time pass written for you. I am going to post this on our Google Classroom, so at any point if you want to go back and re-watch one of the questions, it'll be available for you. Thank you, and I will see you guys soon.